Maybe you've heard of the saying that 80% of the wealthy of any nation or the world's wealthy is controlled by only 20% of the population. In other words, 20% of the population of any country controls 80% of the wealthy. Well, that saying is coming from a principle called Pareto analysis. Pareto analysis is a principle that was developed by the Italian economist called Vilfredo Pareto. Vilfredo Pareto observed in Italy that 20% of the population actually controlled 80% of the lands of Italy, and 20% of that population controlled 80% of the wealthy. Is this true? If you look at what happens in nations and countries, including Zambia, our beloved nation, you'll find that the principle is just talking about a smaller percentage of the population controlling a large percentage of the wealthy. It may not be 20-80%. In Zambia, I feel it's 10-90%. Only 10% of the population are in control of 90% of the wealthy. This principle means that the richer will keep on getting richer and the poorer will keep on getting more poorer. In this video, I want to talk about how you can change the trend, or how you can jump from the bottom 80% to the top 20%. First of all, before I go in the details on that, I want to read you one verse. I want to show you that actually this principle, Jesus talked about it in one of the verses as he was ministering the word. You'll find this in Matthew 13 verse 12. He says, whoever has will be given more, and they will have abundancy. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away from them. So Jesus is saying, if you are rich, more shall be given to you and you'll become richer. If you are poorer, the problem is that even the little things you have might be taken away from you. Let me give you an example of what Jesus is talking about here. Let's say we have a contract, a $50 billion contract, and you are looking for who to give that contract. Even if you had favor as a poor man to be given that particular contract, but when they look at your balance sheet, they cannot trust you with that kind of money. So guess who will win the contract? A rich man. Why? Because a rich person will be trusted with much bigger amounts than a poor man. Well, on a lighter note, I feel it's because people feel like if you give a poor person a lot of money, they might run away with that money. But if you can trust that huge sums of money to a rich person, they cannot run away with it. And if anything goes wrong, a rich man can be trusted to pay back than the poor man. So that's how this trend continues. So it means that a rich and wealthy company can be trusted with big contracts. A poorer company cannot be trusted with those contracts because people are doubting the capacity and ability of this company to execute a contract like that. So it simply means that those who are rich will get more favors and become more richer than those who are poor. Now, if you are to change the trend, if you are to jump from the bottom 80% to the top 20%, the question is, what should you do? If you want to be in the top 20 league, you must do what the top 20 people do. Coming down to Pareto analysis at a level that we can relate to and understand, do you believe that 80% of the income you have might be coming from only 20% of your activities? And 80% of your results that you have should also be coming from 20% of your activities. 20% of your friends that you have might be contributing 80% of value in your life. And the 80% of the friends you have might be contributing a very small amount of value to your life, sometimes even zero value. 80% of the wealth you generate might be coming from 20% of your time well invested, and you're wasting 80% of your time on the trivial few. The top 20% that generates 80% of the wealthy are called the critical few. And the 80% of your activities that only generate 20% of your wealthy are called the trivial majority. So what is it that makes the rich people richer? Number one, the rich people have learned to focus on the critical few. They identify the critical few activities that generates 80% of their income. And they focus on those activities. And they have also identified the 80% of their activities that generates zero or no value at all. And this is what the rich people do. They delegate the 80% of activities that generates low value, while they focus on the 20% of the activities that generates higher value. If you change your mentality on that, the problem that we have with the majority lower 80% is that we put all our efforts and concentrate on the 80% of the activities that only generates low values in our lives, instead of focusing on the critical few. If you are a company, you also realize that probably 80% of your sales are just coming from 20% of your customers. The problem is, if you focus your attention on the 80% of the customers that only give you 20% of your sales, you will fail. What the rich do is focus on the critical few. There may not be too many customers that make your business tick, but those few customers, you must focus on them, while you can delegate other people to focus on the other 80% of your customers that only give you 20% of your value. So the rich people have learned to focus on the critical few that gives them higher value and delegate the majority 80% that gives only a smaller percentage of their income. This also brings us to another principle that will change your life. If you are to jump from the majority 80%, the lower 80%, to the top 20%, controlling over 80% of the wealthy of your country or the wealth of your world, you must also learn to prioritize. Prioritizing means you will focus on doing the critical few tasks first before you do the other irrelevant tasks. And as a matter of fact, I've already said the other tasks, 80% of the tasks that only generate 20% of the value in your life, you can delegate these things while you focus on the critical few. Refuse the temptation to deal with the minority, to deal with the majority of the activities that has got no value, and prioritize them. Begin to prioritize the tasks that might be few, but they generate great value. This might not be easy, and the only reason why many people, or the majority, simply focus on the 80% that is of low value and generates low value in their lives is because it's easy to do the 80% of the activities. But to do the critical few activities that generates a high value in your life is quite difficult. But whenever you think of jumping from the bottom 80% to the top 20%, you must set your priorities right. So go for big things first. Do not try to fulfill the small tasks first before you attempt fulfilling the bigger tasks. Go for the critical few that generates a great value in your life. Also, that means you must be choosing your goals in a wise way. If you took a piece of paper right now and begin to write your objectives and goals for this year, you will realize that on the list of 10 goals, there are only maybe 2 goals that will generate the greatest impact in your life. and that will generate more than 80% of your growth in terms of wealth. You realize that the other 8%, the other 8 of the task, which represents the 80%, will only generates a low-valued income or wealthy in your life. So what do the rich people do that keeps them on top? And what is it that the majority 80% are doing that is keeping them at the bottom? The 20% that are at the top, they know how to prioritize, they go for bigger projects, they don't concentrate on smaller activities and friends that generates only little value in their lives. They go for high value. And what is it that the 80% at the bottom do that keeps them at the bottom? They are afraid of attempting big things. So they go the easier route and they deal and focus on the 80% of the activities that only generates little in their lives. I hope you are blessed with this kind of teachings. Change your mindset. Begin to go for the critical few that matters. If you are running a company, you may realize that only 20% of your employees had 80% of the value to the company. Those are the employees you focus on. Those are the employees you motivate. Rather than focusing your strengths and motivation on the 80% of the employees that only generate 20% of the value in your organization. I want to hear your comments on Pareto analysis and the scripture we read where Jesus said, if you have, more shall be given to you. And if you do not have, even the little that you have might be taken away from you. So it's very dangerous to live at the bottom 20% of the population. Jump to the top, at the bottom of 80% of the population, jump to the top 20% of the population and be in control of 80% of the wealthy of your country. Be blessed.